couple of questions for you, actually.
Yes.
So first of all, so for me, I don't do the number thing so much. I have in
Mhm.
the past, but for me, I absolutely believe that spirit or guidance or life or whatever you want to call it, God is speaking to me all the time. And so I see it everywhere. I see it in the deer that runs across the road. I see it in
Mhm.
the child's face in the grocery store. Like I hear
Yeah.
messages all the time. And I'm curious for you what the numbers mean for you.
So if I'm not going to be too wordy on this story, I swear.
Okay. Yeah.
But I want to tell you two stories actually of when I was younger and I saw this show up for the first time, just so that you can understand kind of where I'm coming from with my experience in this. And then how it sort of refueled itself when I made some pretty serious decisions as far as life choices 2 years ago. So the first thing, luckily, I have my best friend, one of my best friends, who can validate this story because it really sounds unbelievable. But when I was in high school, I would do this thing where anytime I talked about somebody, anytime I said anybody's name, it could be one of my friends, it could be somebody in my class, a teacher, whatever, it literally never failed. They would walk by wherever I was sitting in the building because we would have study hall periods. I went to an all girls college preparatory school in Chattanooga. And so it was a very unique bubble that we were in academically. And so it was an adjustment for me. I really didn't feel like I fit into the environment. And I felt like there wasn't much diversity in the environment as far as, other classmates and personalities and things like that. And, just normal things. And so I just always really craved to kind of get outside of my bubble, if that makes sense. And I always loved to travel, even as a young child. So I'm trying to find a space of inner peace and comfort and just physically deal with some of the things like stress wise, my eye would twitch, and just all these little physical things that I noticed. I would get cold sores a lot if I got really stressed. My home environments were completely polar opposite. I mean, over here, I've got my mother's house, my godmother, her daughter, my foster brother, my adopted sister, my nanny, we're all in the same house. And then at my dad's, it was my stepmom, my stepsisters, us, and it was very traditional. And so to go from one opposite end of the spectrum to the other as far as environmentally overwhelming or whatever it um was something that, and then you add the school environment into that, so I was just like I was trying to find that place of inner peace. And so for some reason my friends started noticing that every time, and it was just a casual thing, it was just so accidental that I realized that I was doing this. And in fact, I didn't realize how often it was happening until one of my friends pointed out. And so then I started doing it on purpose. And so I would kind of, do it to just brag or whatever. And I'd be like, look, I can say somebody's name and they'll just walk by, just to my close friends, and it would happen. And so I'm like, what is this? I'm trying to figure it out. And my mother's really tapped into her intuition as well. So
Mm.
we just would have conversations about it. And so it wasn't so much the number thing for me then, as it just was these weird synchronicities. As far as anything that I would say, it would happen, good or bad, just speaking things into existence at that point for whatever reason in my life, wherever I was energetically, I was tapped in.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize what that was until 2015, and this was 2002, 2003 when I was doing that the first time. And then after that, I started listening to Abraham Hicks. And
Mm.
I was like, oh, what is this? Wait a minute. This might be some good magic. I don't know. I wasn't really sure how to process it. So I thought to myself, okay, I was listening to one of her videos, and I just something kind of came to me. Things kind of just these voices, kind of a loud inner voice has been a dominant thing for me to experience. Like I've just always had a really dominant inner voice, and it's almost like somebody's talking to me. So you have to listen. It almost startles me. So I had this voice that was like, if I can tap back into whatever energy it was when I was in high school, my senior year, when I really was at the height of doing and seeing and noticing and creating all of these synchronicities, what if I can recreate that? What if I can, how, like, what was I thinking? Well, and I was just so excited about the future. And I wanted to travel and I wanted to do all these things. And I felt like I had this big vision, no clarity, no direction, just this feeling of this monstrous thing that
Mhm.
I was going to create that was going to bring so much value to the world. And I had literally no idea other than getting the idea of being a writer that which my parents were like, no, we didn't have you do all this college prep school to go, you can go be a writer. No. So that was a hobby that I was instructed to, pursue in my spare time. So, you can imagine how the college conversations went. But it was going to college for me was very traumatic because my whole plan that I had in my mind completely went to crap. Completely went to crap. I wanted to leave. I wanted to go to California or Florida or Hawaii or somewhere, anywhere, beachy, anything, and I was just so excited about life that when I ended up being the only one out of my graduating class to stay in our local university, I was devastated. And I was like, how did this happen to me? Um, how did, and my GPA just wasn't where it needed to be, and just all these factors that I really didn't foresee. So my shift in energy at that time was really drastic, going from this feeling of I can do anything, go anywhere, be anything, and just that really free spirited space. I knew I wanted to have my own business. I knew I wanted to create my own schedule. I knew I wanted control over my life, and I knew I wanted to do things that made me feel connected to my purpose. And I knew I wanted to always maintain inner peace because I had a very um, energetically disruptive environment in some of my childhood. No fault to any, I mean, I do it to my kids now, and it's so non-intentional, but it's just, as a family you just have this mix of personalities and sometimes they clash. And so I always felt like mine clashed, and I was the oldest, and it was just, a lot of things. So in 2015, when I was trying to recreate that feeling, I had this weird, it took me a couple years to really truly get deep back into that energy space, and a lot of that was the absence of self-doubt.
Mhm.
So between the time I became a young adult, did the college thing for a little while, tried to figure out my own way, all that time, what was throwing me off, I feel like in hindsight, the difference in my energy was the amount of self-doubt and lack of self-confidence, and all of that was coming from these toxic habits of codependency. So I was really seeking not everyone else's approval, but the person that I chose to be in an intimate relationship with, I was very much seeking their approval. And those relationships that I was attracting literally until last year, any relationship I had been in a way toxic for me. And so the relationships that I had helped me work through those patterns and gain some self-awareness in that. So in 2015, I had done so much of that work that by the time it was 2017, I just had really tapped back into this space where I was like, I feel like I'm myself again. I was so excited about my birthday that year, I remember, even though I didn't do anything. And I was just excited about the work that I was doing. And I, for the first time, had that same feeling like I did in high school. And so I was practicing massage therapy at the time. I'm so grateful that my path led me to that because it was such a beautiful blend of the familiarness of medicine to me and my interest in that, but also in a holistic approach, which I felt like for me makes more sense and is more appropriate. But um, I had a choice. I had to do a whole bunch of continued education. I had to renew my license, or I could invest that same amount of money into starting the Collective Compass and taking some classes that would really help me with that, investing in the equipment that I needed to be virtual and to do all these things. And so I chose that. And that was in August of 2019. So it was interesting to me when, the start of 2020, we wouldn't have been able to practice.
Ah.
Every massage therapist I knew was having to take a break just because of the COVID. And with the pandemic, obviously, it would have put me really at risk. Um, and it was just something in my spirit telling me everyone I knew thought I was crazy. Everyone was like, well, you should keep it at least just to keep, practicing on the side. And it's not that I didn't want to do that, but it was just the situation, life gives you situations to deal with, and you
Yeah.
have X amount of choices, you have X amount of dollars, but sometimes that's happening to our benefit, right? And
I would suggest
so,
always.
yes, right. Always to our benefit. And
Yeah.
so that's what I had to remind myself when I was figuring out. Also, my youngest was in Mexico visiting her biological dad, and I had to have money to go get her. And that was very important, obviously, to, travel. And so it was just really one of those times where I had to make a really uncomfortable life decision. And so that same day that I chose to make that decision, I called a couple. I had a couple that they were both my clients, and I had a mobile massage practice, so I would go to my clients' homes. And so I thought, okay, so if I'm going to really do this, who can I pick to take off my schedule first? It was a symbolic thing, if anything else, just to really solidify that commitment to go full in with the Collective Compass. And so I had a couple that the woman had just text me, and she said, yeah, usual time, stuff. And so when I messaged her back, and I was like, actually, I'm going to have to talk to you about seeing if somebody else can come and work on you guys, because I'm making a big decision to go in this other direction, and I want to make sure you guys are still supported. And I just let her know. And that was the first time that I, and now it's sort of like you can recognize that as speaking that into existence, but it was just me committing to do the actions to follow the decision, so that really I didn't back out.
Mm.
And so when she texted me, it was 10 something in the morning, and I just noticed that day that it was a Friday, and I saw the time said 1:11. And I was like, it's 1:11. And then I saw later the time was 2:22. I was like, what? Every time I get up, every time I look at the clock, it's okay. So then it was 3:33. And I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? This is 3 hours in a row. And I can't even process, it was just the weirdest feeling. So I had to go pick up my son from school, and I went out, and I kid you not, I don't see spirits or entities or anything like that ever. This is the one and only time this has ever happened to me in my life. But I was pulling out of my driveway, and I looked back, and beside the mirror of the other car in the driveway, I saw a figure, a woman. I saw her face, I saw her hair, I saw, I don't, I thought I was crazy for a second. And when I pulled back up in the driveway and I checked the time again, it was 4:44. And it was all in the same day. And I was like, what is going on? And so I have my godmother, she's very tapped into all this area of the spiritual side that I am not as knowledgeable about, as far as, how all of that stuff works. And or at least her opinion I thought would be valuable to me in the time. It might give me some sort of feeling of understanding, but it was literally since that day, I kid you not, um, I've seen numbers like that just nonstop. Every time I look at the clock, it's always some sequential number. And so you asked me, to make a long story short, what does that mean to me? I don't know that I care. Now, at first, I looked up what the numbers actually meant. The twos and the threes and the fours, what do they represent, Um, and there's people that have different opinions on things like that. But for me, it just simply means that I'm really tapped in. Really,
Got it.
really, really tapped in. So it doesn't matter if it's numbers or whatever it is that's signifying for you, because you may have numbers all around you, but that's just not what you're noticing. I'm a really big number person. I've always kind of felt like a number person. I have a much more photogenic memory when I see a sequence of numbers than I
Mm,
do a sentence of words. So
mm,
um I just feel like, I was spending too much time trying to figure out what it meant, and I just, again, had that really dominant inner voice that said, "You're wasting time. You're trying to act like you're doing something, but you're not." At the end of the
mm.
day, I don't need to research, number signs for 3 hours just because it really freaked me out. This is just what it's like when you can be tapped in and when you're not. You can notice the absence of that. And so it's a gauge for me
Mm.
as far as how much I'm practicing my spiritual health practices, because the more I know, am I feeling peaceful inside? Yes. Am I doing my breathing to where my diaphragm's actually expanding so that I don't, for some reason, have unnecessary anxiety surfacing? So, like, all those little things that we can notice within our own unique self, we have these indicators that tell us when we're off, and just being aware of that and trying to keep those in balance, that's just all that it means to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, there would be people who would argue that that, when we get something in our head and it becomes a point of focus, then we see it everywhere. It's kind of like if you're going to buy
Mhm.
a new car and you want to like
Yes.
I have an Xterra
Mhm.
and when I was going to buy my Xterra, I wanted an Xterra. I really wanted a dark blue
Mhm.
Xterra and I would see Xterras of all different colors everywhere,
Mhm.
right? And then I got my Xterra, of course. So
Mhm.
it just, when we put our focus on something, we just tend to see a lot of that thing.
Mhm.
But what I appreciate about what you shared is that it's not just merely, oh, this number is here again. It actually is your inner compass
Mhm.
telling you, oh yeah, you're on track. You're
Yeah,
tuned in. You're doing your practices. You're awake, right? You're waking
yeah.
up and you're evolving and all those things. So I really appreciate that a lot.